Picture this. The year is 19 BBY. Order 66 has just been executed across the galaxy, but on one forest world, something goes terribly wrong for the clones. The Wookiees of Kashyyyk don't just resist the betrayal of their Jedi allies, they declare war on Palpatine's new regime. What started as loyalty to their Jedi friends becomes the spark that could have changed everything we know about the rise of the Empire. This isn't just another rebellion story. This is about how the galaxy's strongest warriors could have torn apart Palpatine's plans before they even began, fundamentally altering the course of galactic history for decades to come. In our timeline, when Order 66 was executed on Kashyyyk, Master Yoda sensed the betrayal and escaped with the help of Tarful and Chewbacca. The Wookiees showed remarkable restraint, helping their Jedi ally flee rather than seeking immediate revenge against the clone troopers who had served alongside them during the Clone Wars. But what if that restraint never came? What if the sight of their trusted clone allies turning their weapons on the revered Jedi Master triggered something deeper in Wookiee culture, something the Republic never understood despite their alliance during the Clone Wars? The key lies in understanding how Wookiees view loyalty and betrayal, concepts that run far deeper than most species in the galaxy realize. For Wookiees, honor isn't just a personal virtue. It's a biological imperative encoded in their very DNA through millennia of evolution. Wookiees don't just have life debts to individuals. Their entire species holds what they call honor bonds, sacred promises that extend to entire communities and span generations. These bonds aren't mere social contracts, but spiritual connections that shape every aspect of Wookiee society. When Yoda helped liberate Kashyyyk during the Clone Wars, every Wookiee on the planet became bound to protect not just him personally, but the ideals he represented. To betray a Jedi wasn't just an attack on one person, it was an assault on everything the Wookiees had sworn to defend. In Wookiee culture, such violations demand immediate and total response, activating ancient warrior instincts that have protected their species for thousands of years. The moment Commander Gree raises his weapon toward Yoda, something unprecedented happens in this alternate timeline. Instead of helping Yoda escape quietly, the Wookiees interpret this betrayal as a violation of the most sacred trust possible. This isn't just a military coup, it's a spiritual violation that demands immediate and overwhelming response according to ancient Wookiee lore. The sight of clone soldiers, beings they had trusted with their lives, turning on their most revered ally triggers a primal response that overrides all political considerations. Tarful doesn't just intervene to save Yoda, he lets out the traditional Wookiee war cry known as the Hrar Vosk, roughly meaning honor death in basic. This isn't just anger or protective instinct, it's a formal declaration that the honor bond has been broken and that Palpatine's new regime has proven itself unworthy of Wookiee loyalty. The cry echoes through the forest canopy with such force that it shakes the massive trees themselves, and every Wookiee who hears it understands exactly what it means. This is the sound that hasn't been heard on Kashyyyk for over 4 centuries, the call to total war. Within minutes, every Wookiee settlement across Kashyyyk receives the call through their traditional communication networks that span the planet's massive tree cities. The clone troopers, still struggling with their inhibitor chips and the conflicting orders flooding their minds, find themselves surrounded by 8-foot-tall warriors who can literally rip a person's arms clean off. But the Wookiees aren't acting on blind rage. They're following a cultural protocol that's existed for thousands of years. The clone troopers never stood a chance. Unlike other worlds where Order 66 was executed swiftly and efficiently, Kashyyyk becomes a slaughter. Here's where our alternate timeline gets really interesting. Instead of stopping at just protecting Yoda and eliminating the immediate threat, the Wookiees make a decision that will echo across the galaxy for generations. They decide that if Palpatine's regime can turn clone soldiers on the Jedi so easily, programming them to murder their own commanders without question or hesitation, then this new government represents everything they despise. It's not just unworthy of their loyalty, it's a threat to the very concept of honor that defines Wookiee existence. The Great Tree Council convenes for the first time in over 400 years. Unlike human governments that operate on politics and compromise, Wookiee leadership is built on honor, strength, and wisdom earned through centuries of life experience. The eldest Wookiees, some over 400 years old, have seen multiple galactic conflicts and understand something that younger species don't, that governments are temporary, but honor is eternal. The debate that follows isn't about strategy or politics, but about the fundamental question of what it means to be Wookiee in a galaxy that seems to have forgotten the meaning of loyalty. Elder Ati-Chit-Chuk, Chewbacca's father and one of the most respected voices on Kashyyyk, speaks the words that change everything. Palpatine's regime has shown its true nature, not as a government of laws and justice, but as a system that breeds soldiers who will murder their own commanders without question. This isn't strength or order. This is the weakness of slaves, and Wookiees will never serve slaves. His words carry the weight of centuries of Wookiee tradition, and when he finishes speaking, the silence in the Great Chamber is absolute. Every Wookiee present knows that they stand at a crossroads that will define their species for generations to come. The decision reaches beyond simple self-defense. The Wookiees declare that Kashyyyk will not simply defend itself. It will actively work to bring down what they now see as Palpatine's corrupt regime that breeds betrayal and dishonor. This isn't rebellion for political reasons or territorial disputes. This is a species-wide rejection of everything the new empire represents, based on a fundamental violation of trust that can never be repaired. When the council votes, it's unanimous, something that hasn't happened in Wookiee politics for over 800 years. Within 72 hours, every newly established Imperial facility on Kashyyyk is either destroyed or captured. The Wookiees also seize all Republic military equipment and vehicles left on the planet during the transition of power. But the Wookiees aren't just acting on emotion, they're thinking strategically with the calculated precision of master tacticians. They know something the new Imperial leadership has forgotten in their arrogance. Kashyyyk isn't just another forest world with primitive inhabitants. It's one of the most strategically important systems in the galaxy, and the Wookiees have spent the entire Clone Wars learning every weakness of Republic and now Imperial military doctrine. Kashyyyk sits at the intersection of three major hyperspace routes, including the critical Corellian trade spine. Control Kashyyyk, and you can effectively strangle trade to dozens of core worlds, crippling the economic foundation that Palpatine's new empire needs to survive and expand. But the Wookiees have an even bigger advantage that no one in the Republic leadership considered. They know all the military secrets. During the Clone Wars, Wookiees fought alongside clone troopers, learning their tactics, their weaknesses, their communication protocols, and most importantly, their command structures. They've observed every aspect of Republic military operations, from supply chains to strategic planning, from intelligence gathering to diplomatic negotiations. Now they're going to use that knowledge to tear Palpatine's new empire apart from within. Using captured Republic equipment and communication codes they learned during the Clone Wars, the Wookiees begin broadcasting across the Outer Rim territories and beyond. But it's not the message anyone expects from a planetary rebellion. They don't just talk about their own grievances or demand independence for their world. The Wookiee broadcasts are methodical, detailed, and devastating in their precision. Instead, they reveal everything they've learned about Order 66, the existence of inhibitor chips in clone brains, the systematic programming that turns soldiers into murderers, and the premeditated nature of the Jedi Purge. They provide technical specifications, communication intercepts, and even medical data showing how the chips function. Suddenly, planets across the galaxy realize that if the new Empire could do this to the legendary Jedi Order, they could do it to anyone. The revelation shatters the fiction that the Empire represents order and stability. The Wookiee revelation, as historians in this timeline later call it, creates a cascade effect that destroys Palpatine's consolidation plans before the Empire can truly establish control. The newly declared Emperor suddenly faces not just one rebellious world, but dozens of systems that now understand they're living under a regime built on systematic murder and mind control, of its own military forces. Entire sectors begin declaring independence, and the fragile political structure Palpatine spent decades building starts to crumble within weeks. Here's where everything changes from our timeline. In the original history, Palpatine had 19 years to consolidate power, build superweapons, and crush dissent gradually while maintaining the illusion of legitimacy. But the Wookiee rebellion forces his hand immediately, and he makes choices that doom his empire from the very beginning. Instead of the patient, methodical approach that made him successful in transforming the Republic, he's forced into reactive, desperate decisions that reveal his true nature far too early. First, instead of slowly replacing clone troopers with loyal recruits over many years as originally planned, he's forced to keep relying on clones whose inhibitor chips are now public knowledge throughout the galaxy. Rebellious worlds immediately start developing countermeasures: sound frequencies that disrupt the chips, electromagnetic pulses that disable them entirely, and even surgical procedures to remove them safely. Within months, entire clone battalions are breaking free of their programming and turning on their Imperial officers. The very weapon Palpatine used to destroy the Jedi becomes the instrument of his own downfall. Second, the Death Star construction gets catastrophically rushed. Instead of the originally planned 20 years of careful engineering and testing, Palpatine demands completion in 5 years or less. This means cutting corners everywhere, using inferior materials, skipping safety protocols, and most critically, hiring non-Imperial contractors who secretly sympathize with the rebellion. Many of these contractors begin sabotaging systems from within during construction, creating weaknesses that will prove fatal when the superweapon is finally deployed. But the most devastating change comes from an unexpected source. The surviving Jedi don't go into hiding as they did in our timeline. With the Wookiees broadcasting proof of Order 66 across the galaxy, Masters like Obi-Wan Kenobi and Yoda realize that secrecy is not only pointless, but counterproductive. Instead of hiding and waiting for a new hope to emerge, they begin openly training new Force users among the rebel worlds, rebuilding the Jedi Order as an active military force dedicated to bringing down the Empire. This time, they're not starting from scratch. They have experienced warriors, established supply lines, and most importantly, the full support of populations who now understand what the Empire really represents. What follows isn't the 20-year reign of terror from our timeline. Instead, it's a brutal 3-year galactic civil war that the Empire is losing from the very first day. Palpatine finds himself fighting not scattered rebel cells, but organized military forces led by surviving Jedi and supported by entire planetary governments that reject Imperial authority. The war spreads across multiple fronts simultaneously, stretching Imperial resources beyond their breaking point. By the second year of the war, the Empire controls only the core worlds and a handful of strategically important fortress systems. Darth Vader, still recovering from his injuries on Mustafar and more machine than man, is constantly deployed to put out fires across the galaxy. But here's the crucial difference. He's not hunting down scattered Jedi survivors hiding in remote locations. He's facing organized Jedi strike teams that coordinate their attacks and support each other in battle, making him far less effective than in our timeline. The turning point comes when Master Mace Windu emerges from hiding on Ryloth. In this timeline, his fall from Palpatine's office during their confrontation wasn't fatal. The Twi'leks found him barely alive and spent 2 years rebuilding both his body and his connection to the Force. When he returns, he's scarred but more determined than ever, and he doesn't come back seeking simple revenge. Windu returns with a comprehensive plan. Using Wookiee intelligence networks that span the galaxy, he's identified every major Imperial facility, every key leader, and most importantly, the exact location and vulnerabilities of the hastily constructed Death Star. The raid on the superweapon happens not as a desperate last stand by a small rebel fleet, but as a coordinated strike by 200 surviving Jedi, 50 Wookiee bioships, and rebel fleets from 30 different systems. The Death Star, riddled with sabotage from rebel sympathizers, and built with inferior materials due to rushed construction, doesn't even get to fire its primary superlaser before it's torn apart from within. Instead of the narrow victory we know from our timeline, this is a devastating defeat that costs the Empire its ultimate weapon and hundreds of its best pilots and officers. With the Death Star destroyed and half the galaxy in open rebellion, Palpatine makes his final mistake. Instead of negotiating a settlement or retreating to rebuild his forces, he decides to personally lead a last-ditch assault on Kashyyyk, believing that killing the Wookiee leadership will somehow end the rebellion that has spread far beyond any single world. He arrives to find not just Wookiee defenders, but Yoda, Windu, Obi-Wan, and over 200 other Jedi waiting for him. This isn't the scattered, broken order he destroyed in our timeline. This is a rebuilt, battle-hardened force that's learned from his betrayal and prepared specifically for this confrontation. The final confrontation doesn't involve Vader throwing Palpatine down a reactor shaft in a moment of last-minute redemption decades later. Instead, it's a coordinated assault where Windu finally gets his rematch, Yoda doesn't have to face the Emperor alone, and most importantly, Anakin Skywalker chooses to stand with the Jedi 3 years after Mustafar instead of 20. With the Empire collapsing around him and the truth about Padmé's death revealed through Wookiee intelligence operations, Anakin breaks free of Palpatine's manipulation and control. He removes the Vader mask and stands with his former Jedi allies against the Emperor who destroyed everything he once held dear. The Emperor dies not in a moment of surprise, but in a fair fight against the combined might of the Jedi Order he tried to destroy. By the end of the third year of war, the Galactic Empire is completely finished. But here's what most people don't consider about this alternate timeline. What comes next is not the happy ending you might expect. The Wookiee rebellion doesn't just change who wins, it changes what victory looks like. Without 20 years of Imperial rule to unite the galaxy against a common enemy, there's no infrastructure or agreement for restoring the old Republic. Instead, the galaxy fractures into dozens of independent systems, each with their own Jedi protectors and their own ideas about governance. The Jedi Order rebuilds successfully, but they're no longer the peacekeepers of a unified republic. They've become mediators in an increasingly chaotic galaxy, where old grievances resurface and new conflicts emerge daily. Some worlds prosper in their newfound freedom, while others collapse into anarchy without central authority. But perhaps most concerning of all, without the Empire's tyranny to suppress them, the galaxy's criminal organizations begin to fill the power vacuum. The Hutt cartels expand their territory beyond the Outer Rim. Black Sun emerges from the shadows to control entire sectors. And most dangerous of all, remnants of the separatist movement, thought destroyed in the Clone Wars, begin reuniting under a new leader who promises to finish what Count Dooku started. So what started as a Wookiee's roar of defiance on Kashyyyk becomes a lesson in the complexity of freedom. The galaxy learned that defeating tyranny is only the beginning. Building something better in its place requires wisdom, patience, and unity that may be harder to achieve than victory itself. The Jedi saved the galaxy from the Empire, but they couldn't save it from itself. In the end, perhaps that's the most important lesson of all. Sometimes the greatest victories carry within them the seeds of new challenges, and true peace isn't won in a single battle. It's built one choice, one world, one act of understanding at a time. If you've enjoyed this journey through an alternate Star Wars timeline, there are more untold stories waiting to be discovered. Join our growing community of Star Wars enthusiasts who believe in exploring these what-if moments that could have changed the galaxy far, far away. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and activate notifications to catch our next alternative Star Wars story. Each tale offers a new perspective on the characters we love and the choices that define them. Remember to share your thoughts in the comments below. What other pivotal moments in the Star Wars saga would you like to see explored differently? Your ideas might inspire our next adventure. May the Force be with you, always.